First, there was Dueling Citizens, now Secrets from the Inside. Author Greg Meakin nails it again. Introducing Secrets from the Inside Radio Show. Raw, unscripted, uncensored, uncanceled. Secrets from the Inside starts now. With your hosts, Greg Meakin, Val Olson, and Captain James McCormick.
From what I see, parachuting into the show here too, Val, which is what our modus operandi here. You want to take the mic over here? I think I see him on the icon here. Boy, if we have a guest, that'd be real fun. And I know he's opinionated on this healthcare issue. So if you want to just introduce him, catch him up a little bit on our conversation. But I'm sure excited to see him here. Go ahead, back to you, Val.
Captain James has arrived, and I just want to say good morning and welcome and give you the microphone and fill us in, Captain James. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's been a little bit since I've been on here, but don't worry, I follow, I watch, I listen, and I catch up later as well. So that's what I like about this show. For all you folks that are listening now, great. Share this so that other people can listen to it later as well. This is something that, maybe I don't have enough time to finish the show, right now, but you can, you can come back and you can listen to different segments. It works really well that way. So it's good to be back on here. Was a little under the weather, couldn't speak hardly any at all last week. So I'm glad I got my voice back. And yeah, I know you were talking about the healthcare and some of the, the good things and the bad things. I had a good relationship with the VA in Huntington, West Virginia. I went through a rehabilitation program, which was called polytrauma, and it was very, very good for me. I spent a year and a half in and out of that polytrauma unit. I was up there, at least 2, sometimes 3 times a week, going through, therapy, everything, trying to get my body, my mind, my ability to speak better back. There was a period of time when I had a brain injury that, these brain injuries are funny. The brain injury sometimes does not, immediately manifest itself until, later. And then in some cases, years later or months later or weeks later. And then little things will start happening. I've seen people start to develop, they'll start to develop, mini strokes, and they'll lose the ability to be able to communicate, memory, cognitive functioning. All of these things can be, affected by a brain injury. And I think it's important to remember that when you're dealing with not just veterans, but dealing with people, kids that play football and everything else. I was a football player. I did the boxing, I did all of those things as well. And, my head was beat around like a basketball, by the Harlem Globetrotters. You know what I mean? It was just the way that it was. But the blast injuries are very significantly worse than what we had imagined. And what we're, also seeing is we're seeing people that we're suffering from these same blast injuries, like car wrecks and things like that. And then they start to deal with these issues later in life. So we got to watch that. So healthcare, here's what I tell you about this. Healthcare is dependent on the provider. So you can get a really good doctor. We got a great family doctor, Dr. Danny Westmoreland, giving him a big shout out there in Mason, West Virginia. He's been our family doctor for a long time. Great guy, kind, genuine, generous, and knows us all by first name. These kind of doctors provide, a more reliable service. And I always think about old Doc on Gunsmoke. You watch the old show Gunsmoke. The reason why he was a good doctor is because he cared. and because he had a personal interaction. When you set these hospitals and these medical facilities up, like a like an assembly line, then it doesn't work too well. And so those are just my 2 cents on that. So, anyways, thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Really appreciate that. We were chit-chatting before, imagine James being governor of Alberta 51. Now, you just said you had a family doctor. James, if you were actually, to pick up stakes and move to Alberta, that wouldn't be the case. You would be having to stand in line, just typical what you would expect to see in any other random communist country. No, socialized medicine is what it is. So completely different from USA to Alberta. It would be a real shock to your system, to say the least. Greg, over to you.
Well, I so appreciate James' input there on the healthcare world. We've had a lot of chats about this in the past, on past episodes, Val. Really cool. We talked about the VA and all this stuff. And you brought up something, I'll just say it right now. Interesting. The old quote, governor of Alberta, the concept of Alberta being 51st state, becoming American and stuff. And I, in previous episode, nominated Captain James McCormick to be governor of the brand new state of Arizona, Alberta. And he accepted, just as, again, whether it's informal or whether it's symbolic right now, but he had mentioned that's something he'd love to do. And in the past, remember this, Val? I nominated Sheriff Mark Lamb as the first law enforcement director or sheriff of the new state of Alberta. And as kind of symbolic and quote fun as they may be, I think the important thing, the important message for me to really Alberta 51 people, just the 51 folks, and there are a lot of folks that are not admitting publicly that they're AB 51 folks, but they are, is just to say to those folks that to really, if your pursuit really is to become, it's to become, yes, an American state, but it's to keep your own identity, everything. Yeah, Alberta is a wonderful, wonderful province. I love the folks up there. You've got your oil, you've got your hockey, you've got your culture, and there's no reason you have to leave those behind. You just live under the protection of the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Simple as that. So if there's just kind of a message to folks up there would be start thinking like an American. Keep your Canadian. I'm half Canadian, Val. I'm as Canadian as the day is long, but I'm American too. But start thinking like an American in terms of your governance, your even your leaders. Again, even like governors, whatever. My initial first blush is I love the idea of having American leaders who are American leaders initially to bring the culture, at least the culture, the protection, to the people. But bottom line, here, the overall message is start thinking like Americans, because as we know, without getting too long and cliche, it feels really good. It feels really good to be living under protection and not, again, protection of the Constitution, and not having the real worries that a lot of my Canadian friends have had lately as far as censorship and a little bit of oppression. And we've heard about frozen bank accounts and we've heard about this and that. So turn it over back to you on that, Val, if you want to chat with James or whatever. But that's just kind of my 2 cents on it, is start thinking like Americans a little bit. There you go.
I like that. Well, I do have 2 Americans on the show today, and one who, could potentially be governor someday. I don't know if Danielle Smith just thinks it's a shoo-in, because that's really the style of Alberta politics, is these lifer politicians. But I'm kind of curious, Greg, like you piqued my interest. James, what kind of politician in Alberta would you be? Like, what would you say to these, establishment type? How would you address them, and, diplomatically, if you think you could handle something like that?
So you're asking me that question, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I think the important thing is that we remember that once they become American citizens, that we dive into the U.S. Constitution and make sure that every citizen fully understands how that works. And then we look at some of the state constitutions, like, say, for instance, for Texas, or for my home state of West Virginia, or other states that represent a level of freedom that that seems that it would be more acceptable. I think that's whenever we start to look at, because you're going to have to write a constitution, you're going to have to write a charter, you're going to have to write all of these things, when you establish a new state, just like every other state had to do. During the Civil War, West Virginia wrote theirs. Imagine that. You're breaking away from Virginia and you become a state, in the middle of a civil war. It requires a level of professionalism. It also requires someone with the strength, and I'm not just talking about the physical strength, and I'm not talking about a dictatorial strength, because you don't need that. You need someone with the strength and the ability, but also the civility to be able to sit down and try to unify Alberta into the 51st state of the United States of America. And I can do that. I really believe that I can do that for several reasons. Number one, I'm not afraid to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty. Number two, I believe that the citizens would respect a out front leader because they very much, all of the citizenry up there that I know demonstrate that American pioneer spirit that truly expanded the Old West and made America, to really go from sea to shining sea. So we're really looking at a whole group of patriots there that would have the ability to fully understand and comprehend that. And then they'll enjoy a couple of things. They'll enjoy a lot of things about the freedom that comes with the Constitution. Now, some will have a hard time to adjust, leaving more of a socialist styled government that provides a lot of things that people don't think about. But I think that once you allow free market to take over, and people that really become free and have the ability to be able to sustain that freedom, I think you'll see that they will warm up to that really quickly. All states had to go through these transitions. Look, let's look at the Oklahoma Territory when they did their transition. Let's look at all of these states that were once territories and not actual states. They had to struggle, and then they had to get used to operating on their own. But I would say that a place like Alberta, within year 3 to 6, would see the transition, and they would flow right into it, just like a river flows into a perfect pocket. And they would find themselves in a position to where then they could take their natural resources and some of the things that they normally don't have control over, they would have control of that. Because, see, then they would fall under Article 10 of the United States Constitution, our Bill of Rights. When you look at Article 10, anything that's not specifically designated in Articles 1 through 9, are handed and delivered to the states. So they would have some freedom to be able to control their own destiny. Like, you see these states that are around here, they're able to compete for businesses to come in. And some of the natural resources that are in Alberta would make it extremely attractive to the energy industry and to be able to become a major player in that field. You would see millionaires, people become millionaires because then they retain property ownership, and property ownership that would allow them to be able to negotiate and do things that they normally couldn't be able to do in the situation that they're in right now. You would see people be able to start businesses much more easily, and then have the established offices of Secretary of State. You would have an Attorney General's office. You would have, an auditor's office, a treasurer's office. You would have all of these different supporting agencies inside this state government, and then you would have elected leaders. So imagine that, not appointed, but elected leadership. So that would include your state delegates and your state senators. And that would be based on population. And then you would be able to have at least one U.S. congressman and 2 U.S. senators to represent the state of Alberta in Washington, D.C. So we're talking a lot of opportunities here, folks. We're talking, I could see a military base. That would be one of the first things that I would lobby for. Would be to put the whole North American Command for the United States Armed Forces in dead smack dab center of Alberta. You would see, billions of dollars that would be flowing in from that, and then you would have, automatic protection, because that's a strategic value place as well. Look how close we can get to go over the North Pole. I mean, look, it won't take us very long to get to the heart of our enemies if we need to do that. So this is a strong position, a strong defense position to have as far as the United States goes as well, and it would make you a strong player in all things. And then not to mention the industries and the sub-industries and all the things that would flow from that. The job creation would be massive. I think you would see an improvement in your roads. You would see an improvement in your bridges. You would see an improvement in your infrastructure. You definitely would see an improvement in your medical care, because then you would allow that free enterprise, and you'd be able to buy insurance, and you'd be able to select your own, your own provider. Whereas, now there's, I've heard good and bad about Canadian healthcare. I've heard good and bad. Okay, it's the same thing with VA healthcare. VA healthcare is a form of socialized medicine. Some of it's good, some of it's not good. The wait times are what's really bad. So if I'm someone sitting there with pancreatic cancer or something that's deadly, that I need something done really quick or I'm going to die, I would much rather be able to go out and shop and look around and, get the money and pay for my own care and services. You understand what I'm saying with that? The other thing is the natural resources. And then don't forget what a great tourism place that would become. And then you would not be burdened with, we wouldn't have to have a passport to travel from Alberta to the lower, to the lower 48. We would have, access to, beautiful vacation opportunities. Tourism is a multi-billion-dollar industry, folks. And I think that, once you open that up, you would see massive amounts of tourism that would be flowing across your border. And then the other thing, we add an added buffer to our border crisis that we have now. No longer would we have to worry about that section of the northern border, where all kinds of, it's just crazy what we're seeing. We watch the southern border, but we all know that there's some bad hombres that are getting into Canada, and they're making their way, across the northern border as well. So we understand as Americans that it would be a difficult transition, but I think as a rock solid governor, someone that wouldn't be afraid to roll up their sleeves, I'd be happy to do that, or at least try to be the governor of Alberta. Thank you very much.
Wow, I appreciate the honesty, the boldness. You don't see that style of diplomacy in Alberta. It's much more how can I describe it? Like scared, and it's really hard to watch, especially when it's men. I have a tough time because men are strong, and when I hear your courage, James, and your vision, I find a lot of these Alberta male politicians, they lack a vision, and they're just very timid, very meek, and we need to have these bold leaders with a vision and not afraid to stand up for the people and say the truth. So I really appreciate that, James.
On that subject, Val, you're hitting on something I really want to key on, because listening to Captain McCormick, it's not cliche. These strong men are strong men. The quick example of a story you're familiar of, Val, when we did, because Captain McCormick, just from an American feisty standpoint, like you've heard here, is a born leader. He's a born leader, as was Sheriff Mark Lamb down here. And again, it's not cliche. American courage and leadership, I think, is different. At the campfire, remember our campfire chat where we interviewed Sheriff Lamb for over an hour live, and before the campfire, because we had it beautifully filmed, and I said, Sheriff, this is not going to be live. We're taping it and stuff. So if there's any questions that you're concerned with or don't want to answer or whatever, let me know up front, blah, blah. And that's honestly what I was used to in the Canadian press, Val. And he said, Hal, he said, ask me anything you want. I ain't scared. He said, quote, I ain't scared. Ask me anything you want. And there's that feistiness of American leaders, and I think there's an element of that up there too, Val, in Alberta. But that are the Sheriff Lambs, the James McCormicks. They've been an example to me. Just how James was literally, he went through reviewing Alberta, what he would do as governor of Alberta. There's a born leader right there who will say it publicly. So I just really appreciate that, and to know it's not cliche. I do not see a lot of that up in Canada, to broad brushstroke that, because of the limitations everyone has up there with, honestly, with free speech and being careful what they say, and censorship, and it's just the way it is, everybody. So cheers and salutes to Cap McCormick on that. Salutes to the Mark Lambs and the other amazing leaders out there, Val. Just wanted to touch on that it's not a cliche, it's true. Courage and leadership are real.
And they're contagious too. I mean, you'd have to be living under a rock to not have heard in Alberta, because everyone is following, like, Tuck is coming to Alberta in the new year. But there's these bumper stickers and Danielle Smith, Governor of Alberta, USA shirts that are like selling like hotcakes, I hear. And I mean, it's true. I went and I did a little research on the back end, and there was, like, I think it's close to 75 or 80,000 engaged with this bold shirt of her as the governor. But hearing James and how James has this vision. I mean, I've never heard a vision like that for Alberta. Those are big shoes to fill. Like, if I was running, I'd be nervous coming up against James. That's a bold vision. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not in the bag, because she's a fairly confident politician. I think she's gonna, if her staff are on this morning, they're gonna hear what James is saying, and don't assume you've got it in the bag, right? Like, don't assume, oh yeah, I've got the governor's spot. Danielle Smith, the t-shirts made, the bumper stickers out, and just saying it's not a done deal. Captain James was really impressive.
And Val, you bring up, it's true. And by the way, I've always said this. I like Danielle Smith. I think she's a broadcaster in the past and stuff. I like her. I think she's a very honorable leader. I think she's handcuffed by Canadian Confederation, but that's another story. But can I segue just really, really quick to James, to Captain McCormick on this? I want to hear, it's been on my mind, what happened to his museum, the vandalism.
Oh, yeah.
And also what wedding gift he got from George W. Bush and Laura Bush. That's been on my mind. So, anyway, just, not to switch directions, but I'd love to hear you on that one, Captain.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, first off, let's go with the vandalism. So, of course, you all know that we talked about we have a museum. We had to build this museum and had to get it funded, and constantly staying up on that. But somebody vandalized it. Turned out to be a 17-year-old kid, and we were able to catch him because we've got camera systems. We're locked in here, and the beauty of it is that I had a chance to meet with the boy and with his grandmother and spend some time with him. And honestly, there's two ways you can go with this. I can go with the way that a lot of people were saying, prosecute him as a juvenile. which really, it's just going to cause him problems in his future. Or I could potentially get some work out of him. So what we did was we worked out probably the best case scenario, and that was 24 hours of community service. And during that community service time, I don't have him sweeping floors and doing menial tasks. I'm actually talking to this young man about leadership and about doing things while you're here. So you're not just going to come here and sit and say, welcome to the museum. You're going to interact with the public. We're going to teach you how to take care of this aquarium. We're going to teach you how to take care of artifacts. And when you leave here, you're going to have a skill, and you're going to have a full understanding of who I am and the kind of person I am, because I'm going to take 24 hours, over 3-hour periods every week, 3 hours every week. And I'm going to work with you. I think the kid appreciates it. We've already had the discussion about the military, and I'll just tell you that a lot of people are shying away from joining the military, and I would encourage folks to not look at the military as a last option, but you really need to look at it as your first option. And here's why I tell you this. Service to your country builds on your character. Now, are there problems in the military because of this current woke agenda? A lot of people say, oh, I hate hearing the woke agenda. Well, yes, this boy is a product of the woke agenda. This boy thinks that it's okay to go up and do what he did, and pretty much that he wasn't going to face any kind of punishment, because the worst thing I could have done was to take it to court, and they would have said, we'll put you on probation until you turn 18 years old. We'll make you pay a $75 fine plus court costs. And that's nothing. What does that leave with that gentleman? That leaves him with, I basically did it. I paid a little bit of a fine. And this guy's a jerk. You know what I mean? Because all he wanted to do was give me a bad record. So we had an opportunity to correct that. And I think that what's going on now is that they are being educated by the quote unquote, I'm just going to say it. We called them shithouse attorneys when we was in the military. And these are people that think they know everything. And they're generally your same age, never done anything outside of go to school. And they're out here educating these kids because they're watching stuff on social media. They're watching Joe Biden trip on bicycles, and they're watching Kamala Harris, make outlandish comments. They're watching the Palestinian movement. They're out there chanting this from the river to the sea, not even knowing what it means. And then they're being confused by, well, maybe I was supposed to be a woman instead of a man, So we have all these things that are going on, and it's being pushed by this group. And like I said, we have to get that under control. So the best way I can do that is to give that guy some community service and allow him to be around a real red-blooded American that's not going to be afraid to talk to him like I would talk to any one of my sons. And I have done so. And he has accepted it very well and starting to straighten out a little bit. Now, I'm going to get him to get a haircut next, and he may not like it, but, we have a dress code here, and you're going to follow it. If not, then, we'll go to option 2. And that's just the way we need to start being. That's the way businesses used to be. So what's the second part of the question, Greg, before I go into anything else? Is there anything else I need to hammer on that?
What you're touching on, and then we'll wrap this little portion up, other than talking about the wedding present from W. Yeah. Okay, but I want to wrap this up. You're hitting on a very, very important thing, and what you're talking about is leadership, mentorship of young people, of young men. Okay, it's what Jordan Peterson does. It's what I do. It's what Lamb does. It's what you do. And that's the missing link right now is leadership. Going to tell you a very, very quick anecdote that applies to this. I actually took when I went to school a million years ago back in Quebec. I took a police technology and learned a lot of just about the police world, the law enforcement world and stuff. And the big issue was at the time was recidivism.
Sure.
Which is to do the crime again.
Mm.
Just tragic numbers that if you've been incarcerated, it's like 80% recidivism that you go back.
Yeah.
And there was a statistic that honestly, James, it stayed with me since I'm talking a long time ago, 1977, 78. Yeah. The statistic is that when kids, and especially young men, because they become the criminals, young men are the criminals.
Sure.
If they are confronted their very first time, and this is what Sheriff Lamb calls at-risk youth. They're 10 to 15.
Sure.
But if they're confronted the very first time and basically given what you're sharing, it's kind of a wrist slap legally, not getting into the legal world yet, because that puts them into the legal world funnel and databases. But it's basically teaching them a lesson that it was astonishing statistics that most people, if just after doing their first crime, if just taught a good lesson at that point and then cut loose, no questions asked, they don't do it again. It's stunning, James. It's why you didn't offend or I didn't offend because of our parents when we were young.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the key is, how do you accomplish that? How do you do that in terms of a program? And the answer is, I've already written within a book review, is Sheriff Mark Lamb's Youth Redirection Program. And I'll leave it at that. Val's read that, and to me, it was like an answer. And it's very much like you transformed, quote, court-ordered community service into 24 hours of pure leadership and mentorship.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's no value into just going out picking up trash on the side of the road.
Exactly.
Other than making people feel good, you know.
Yeah, it's published, so I'll leave it. But what the sheriff does, he does it's whatever a 2-month program for kids 10 to 15 at risk before they're official offenders, and he puts them to, again, guidance courses, in counseling, horse therapy, you know, and blah blah. And these kids, it turns out, there's 98% success rate.
Yeah.
They don't reoffend. And what happens, and these kids develop relationships with these mentors. I'm going to be going in as a speaker. He's invited me to go in as a speaker, as a mentor to these kids. But they don't reoffend, James, and then they become what you're talking about, productive young men. They go to the military or they get a good job and they pay their bills and blah, blah, because you dealt with them right the first time. So there you go on that. Really, really cool. And don't forget the W wedding present.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, we've got a couple of things from that family, and of course I've got, you know, Donald Trump ties, like I told you that. But let me go into this mentorship. I think it's very important, and I think this would be part of the thing that I would do if elected as your governor in Alberta, is that I would definitely take mentorship to the next level. You know, we have things that we do in our state and in other states, just like what I'm talking about. But you have to have youth leadership. So every year, it's not as good now. It needs to be improved upon. But every year we bring kids into the legislature to serve as pages so that they understand how the state government works. Now, you know, most of them are kids of other politicians or their buddies or, you know, things like that. And but I'm very cognizant of grabbing kids that never would get that opportunity. So I go to schools. We look for people. We look for kids, and I'm not looking for the number one child. I'm looking for the one that's struggling right now because they need something to motivate them. And maybe it's not this day of serving as a page on the Senate or the House floor, but that experience is one that generally helps to boost their ego just a little bit. I go in and I look and I see, you know, look, our kids are beat down. They're beat down. They're beat down with excessive schoolwork. I've got a son right now who is in the 9th grade, honors, algebra, honors, English, cutting 100, pushed, pushed to make 100 plus, constantly working on something, constantly doing something. And I'm thinking, where's the time to play and be a child at? Because the schools have put so much on them, because they're told now he could goof off, he could clown around, and drag home B's and C's, and be a perfectly fine student. But that's not what he wants to do. And the thing that they have made this brass ring so much higher for them to reach, I think it's important for us as mentors, men and women, to teach these kids how to be men and women, to teach them how to serve in their roles, and stop ignoring the dang 10,000-pound elephant in the room when these kids start going off of a rail and start following some of this leftist nonsense, garbage that you're seeing pushed down here. Look, it's not okay for you to go out and to destroy things, to tear things up, even though you think that it can be justified because you're doing it in the name of BLM, the Palestinian movement, or some sort of an anti-establishment movement. It somehow makes it okay. We need to start telling them that any kind of acts of destruction and violence like that are wrong. And that goes for all sides. The other thing that's woefully missing is the ability for people to be able to express their feelings, how they feel. In schools right now, I've got kids that go to school that are young, okay, and they sometimes deal with bullies. Well, when I went to school, we dealt with the bully. You just had to stand up to the bully. In my day in school, it wasn't, well, if you do anything, you get kicked out of school. No, you could defend yourself. Well, schools nowadays don't allow that. And they wonder why kids hunker down in a damn corner when somebody comes in there threatening violence in a school. They hunker down. They try to teach them to hide. And that's a good thing to do to keep them from getting hurt and getting killed. But I'm telling you, they're afraid to say anything or get involved. So a lot of times they know this kid's going to come in there with the firearm and they won't say anything because they're afraid of getting in trouble, because our educational leaders are not allowing them to stand up and to be young men and women of character and decency and honor and integrity, and stand up and say, no, you don't have a right to get up in my face. No, you don't have a right to yell at me because I'm black, because I'm white, because I'm Jewish, because I'm whatever, okay? You don't have that right. And we're not teaching our kids to stand up. They're teaching them to be sheep, and they're being pushed around and led down this pathway of destruction that is going to destroy this country. And I'm telling you right now, the first thing that you need to do when you dealing with states is you have to get control of this educational institution as well. And you need to make sure that they're teaching nothing but fundamentals of education. I don't need them taught in the ways of whatever. If you want to do that, then you set up debate teams and you allow these schools to debate, current topics with each other. You give both of them a side to take, and you allow them to openly to be able to say and to speak the way that they want to speak. I'm telling you right now, folks, if you want to know what's going on, why people ride on a subway, the most ungodly thing I've ever seen is grown men setting their asses down on a subway while pregnant women are standing up, holding on to a rail while a subway's moving. That would have never happened. That would have never happened in the 50s. That would have never happened in the early 60s. And it would never happen with me, because there's no way that I could plant my butt in a seat and sit and watch some old woman or somebody that is feeble or somebody that is pregnant bouncing around. You see, we have to learn to teach men to be men and women to be women again. And I think that's important. So that's my hopes with this. Now, some people will disagree with me, Greg and Val. They'll say that I'm old-fashioned. They'll say, well, you're just a bigot or whatever. shit, anytime that they disagree with anything you say, that's what you are. You're a bigot. You must be you must be a racist. You must be a sexist. You must be these things. No, I just realized my wife realizes that there's things that she does that I can't do. And there's things that I do that she can't do. Like I can't have a baby. Okay. But she can. And she's done it very well many, many times. Okay. And we have beautiful children. She gives a level of nurturing and love in our home that demands respect. And the boys, my boys to this very day, they love their mother. They would never disrespect their mother. They still walk up, they kiss their mother on the cheek, they give her hugs, they tell her that they love her. Okay, 30 years old, and they still do that. Okay, because they know that that's just the way that it is. And I think that that is an absence. There's an absence of that. So then you go to school, your teachers got your kids longer than you've got them. So, you that are out there doing homeschool, God bless you, because you're not allowing that to happen. But if you are one of those that have that happening, you need to be very, very involved and understand what they're being taught and listen to them when they come home. I'm afraid to stand up to this person because I'm going to get in trouble, but they keep picking on you every day. And when they pick on somebody every day, that destroys their self-esteem a little bit every day. And because they're afraid of getting in trouble by turning around and saying, leave me alone. Speaking up now will get you detention home. If somebody walks up and slaps you upside the face and you knock the crap out of them, let me tell you, when I went to school, it got you a pat on the back from the coach. Stand up for yourself, boy. Don't let somebody push you around. It didn't get you kicked out of school. It got that other person kicked out of school because it was the person that started it. So what's happened to that? What's happened to holding people accountable? And that includes these kids. These kids are taught this crap at their homes by either the presence of a terrible parent or the absence of a parent. But whatever the case may be, it takes a village to raise these kids. And sometimes the best thing that can happen to them is for you to let those kids that are getting bullied just wallop the shit out of them. And then they'll realize that I can't do that. There is a punishment for my actions. All right, I'm going to stop there. So it's not all about violence. Sometimes you can stop it by saying, stop, But teachers are embedding it into these kids' heads. Don't say nothing. Run away. Walk away. You're teaching them to run away the rest of their life by doing that. And I'm telling you, guys like me had to take kids like that over to places like Iraq and Afghanistan and teach them, no, it's not okay for you to run away. You have to stand and fight, son, or you will die. They will shoot you in the back just as well as they'll shoot you in the face. And you have to teach a level of courage because we see this in public school systems where they're destroying it. I'm going to say one more thing about schools. MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I just got accepted to a course there in 3D printing and additive. It's very hard to get accepted into MIT. Okay, it's not an easy thing. But I just recently saw where, again, radical, Islamic supporters on the campus are terrorizing these Jewish kids who are afraid to leave their freaking dorms. And when they stand up for themselves, they are called down by the staff. Nothing that they can do. They don't even want them to wear their Stars of David as necklaces around the campus. So do you think I'm going to write a $6,500 check, okay, to MIT and to transfer probably $40,000 of my GI Bill money to them? Hell no. When that came out, and this is what we need to do as Americans, when you see institutions doing those things, stop giving them your money. They'll get it whenever they start running out of money. and you tell them exactly why you're not going to give them their money. So I wrote a letter to MIT, put it on one of my social media posts today, that I will not be attending their course, and I don't care. You know, MIT would be a great sheepskin to hang up on my wall, but not when they've got that kind of reputation. You know, I think that my honor and integrity is more than that. I would rather go to the local vocational school at this point, where I don't have to listen or put up with any of that garbage, because I won't put up with it. Like I told you guys, here is a whole different ball game. You're not going to bring that nonsense here to New Haven, West Virginia, or Point Pleasant, West Virginia, because we got people here that's not going to put up with it. And if the rest of the country would do the same thing, and I'm not talking about violence, folks, I'm talking about stand up for your damn rights and stop sitting in the corner and being a mouse. Stand up, be a man, be a woman, being an American, and stand up for your rights. Now, let's go